Tamla Records, which later became Motown Records, came to be on January 12, 1959, by founder Berry Gordy. Motown was a black-owned and centered around black culture company. Gordy moved to Detroit from Georgia with his family during the migration of thousands of African Americans from the South. Motown Records was giving the city of Detroit something new to listen to. This turned into the center of soul music. Over the decades, Motown, also known as Hitsville, recorded Diana Ross and the Supremes, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, The Four Tops, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, The Marvelettes, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Lionel Richie and the Commodores, and Tina Marie. Gordy co-wrote hits for Smokey Robinson and Jackson Wilson, and after this, Gordy purchased a home at 2648 West Grand Boulevard, and this is where Motown started. This home served as a recording studio and as a label headquarters. Hitsville, USA, which Motown was also called, served as Motown's headquarters until 1968. The first hit Motown had was Money, That's What I Want by Barrett Strong, which was co-written by Gordy himself. Diana Ross and the Supremes was the most successful Motown group and also was the most successful female singing group in the history of recording. And Motown released hit songs and prepared its artists for touring and performing. The label was home to choreographer Charlie Adkins as well as Maxine Powell, who ran Motown Finishing School. This is where artists were taught social graces. In 1972, Motown moved its offices to Los Angeles, California. This is where they tried to compete with larger record labels that took over the industry. Even though Motown was still releasing hit after hit, the company eventually hit rock bottom, and Gordy was forced to sell Motown Records to MCA in 1988 for $61 million. Also in 1988, Gordy was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Motown Records also got the name of Motown Sound. This was soul music that was designed for pop radio and features a simple chord progression alongside funky drums and a melodic, heavy bass line. Now the formerly known headquarters to Motown Records is now a museum that was founded by Esther Gordy Edwards in 1985. The Motown Museum is one of the most popular tourist destinations of Southeast Michigan. When you come to the Motown Museum, you are able to stand in Studio A, where countless of the biggest musicians have recorded their number one hits. You can also view the upper flat where Gordy lived with his family in the beginning years of the company. The purpose of this museum is to preserve the legacy of Motown Records and to educate and motivate people about music by showing them artifacts, photographs, and other memorabilia in the museum. Motown Museum's mission is to preserve, protect, and present the Motown story through authentic, inspirational, and educational experiences. Jimmy Hoffa was born on February 14, 1913, in Brazil, Indiana. Jimmy became the president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters from 1957 to 1971. Before this, he moved with his family to Detroit in 1924 after his father passed away, who was an Indiana coal miner. Jimmy left school at age 14 and worked as a stockboy and a warehouseman for years until he began union organizing activities in the 1930s. By 1940, Jimmy became chairman of the Central States Drivers' Council, and by 1942, he became president of the Michigan Conference of Teamsters. Jimmy played a huge role in bargaining in the trucking industry. His efforts even made the Teamsters the largest labor union in the United States. Jimmy survived many prosecutions until 1967, when he was imprisoned in the federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. He was sent there to begin a 13-year sentence for jury tampering, fraud, and conspiracy. Jimmy kept his position as president of the Teamsters while still in prison, and he continued in that position until 1971. President Richard Nixon said that Jimmy could not engage in any union activity until 1980. Of course, Jimmy fought this in court and was believed that he still continued his efforts on the side. On July 30th, 1975, Jimmy disappeared from a restaurant in suburban Detroit. There are many different stories onto how and why he disappeared, but it is said that he had an appointment at a restaurant with Anthony Provenzano, who was a New Jersey Teamster official and former mafia figure, and Anthony Giacolan, who was a Detroit mobster. They both denied having any encounter with Jimmy on that day, and he was never seen again. He was legally presumed dead in 1982. Later, James P. Hoffa, who was Jimmy's son, was sworn in as general president of the Teamsters on May 1st, 1999, after a grueling competition between his opponent in the race to presidency. Corktown is the oldest surviving neighborhood in Detroit, but is still 150 years younger than the city of Detroit itself. The first Irish immigrants came to Detroit in the 1830s, but the Irish immigration really exploded in the 1840s. The Irish became the largest ethnic group settling in Detroit. They mainly lived on the west side of the city, where we now know it as Corktown. Corktown was named by County Cork, the largest county in Ireland, where the majority of our immigrants came from. By the 1850s, Irish immigrants made up half of the population of the 8th Ward. There were many new row houses and detached homes being built with the new population in Corktown. By the time of the Civil War, a German population started growing in Corktown. The Irish population started decreasing in Corktown as they started moving to wealthier parts of the city as they became more comfortable. Around the 20th century, the first Maltese communities settled in Corktown, and it soon became the largest Maltese community in the country. Latinos also came around the same time and settled in Corktown and southwest Detroit. Later in the years, the city of Detroit demolished entire blocks of Corktown in the post-World War II era, but the surviving houses and neighborhoods are the oldest of the city. In the early 1950s, construction of the Lodge Freeway destroyed the eastern edge of Corktown. This included St. Paul's Maltese Church that was a center of life for the Maltese immigrants who populated the district. The remaining residential area of Corktown was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1978, securing the history and survival of the area. Corktown still pays tribute to their Irish roots that made Corktown what it is today. Every St. Patrick's Day, there is a Corktown race that was founded in 1989 by the Fraternal Order of United Irishmen and the Motor City Striders. This race raises funds for the St. Patrick's Senior Center. This race is the largest 5K event in Michigan. Now, Corktown is growing even more after Ford Motor Company bought the abandoned Michigan Central Station and promised to build campus in Corktown. There are events almost every day in Corktown and amazing restaurants like Slow's Barbecue and many more to enjoy every day of the week whenever you want to go and enjoy the history of Corktown.